Hey everyone, and welcome to an Adobe Premiere tutorial. In today's tutorial, we'll be covering the basics of Adobe Premiere, such as making projects, importing files, creating sequences, trimming your videos, adding text, transitions, video effects, as well as exporting your video. I'll also be putting time codes in the description just in case you want to jump around or you have something specific that you're looking for, or if you want to come back and use this video later as a reference. So the first thing you're going to want to do is open Premiere and hit this new project button. This essentially brings up your project window where you can name your project, such as right now, I'm going to name mine Premiere Tutorial. Location is basically where you're going to save your project. So if you hit browse, you can pretty much navigate to anywhere you want to on your computer and save your project file where you want to save it to. Other than that, most of these settings over here you can normally leave the same unless you have some type of issue that comes about. So go ahead and hit OK. So if you're using Premiere for the first time, you'll more than likely open up into the Learning Workspace. The Learning Workspace is the exact same as the Editing Workspace, except the Editing Workspace, as you can tell now, doesn't have the little Learning tab over to the side. So from here, let's pay attention to the bottom left panel here. This is considered your project panel. Your project panel is going to store any audio files, video files, or any other files of any type that you are going to be using for the entirety of your project. So where it says import media to start, you can double click and it'll bring up this media browser. In the media browser, you can navigate to whatever folder you want to. You can either hit import folder, or if you want to, you can double click into the folder like I'm about to do. And you can just click and select clips that you would like to just drag in, or open into your project. So one of the interesting things that you can do with the project panel is you can actually take your mouse cursor and hover over any of the videos and slightly drag across, and it allows you to actually see a preview of what's going on in the video. From here, let's create a sequence. One of the easiest ways to create a sequence is to simply drag any of your video clips and just drag and drop it over onto the timeline. However, when you do this, it makes the sequence have the exact same settings as the video that was used. For example, if I were to click on this video and then go over to the metadata tab, we can see that this video has 24 frames per second and has the dimensions of 1920 by 1080. So if we go to sequence, but I'm sorry, you have to click down here first. So if we go to sequence and hit sequence settings, we can see that the sequence has 24 frames per second as its time base and a frame size of 1920 by 1080. I'm going to change this to 23.976. I just feel like that's more cinematic. And then I'm going to hit OK. So from here, let's go ahead and add more videos into our timeline. But let's say that I want to use, let's say this video here, but I don't want to use the whole thing. I can double click on this video and it'll bring it up into the source monitor. In the source monitor, I can take this little blue arrow cursor and I can drag it anywhere I want it to be. And then I can hit I, this creates an in point, and then I can hit O and this creates an out point. What I have done now is selected a portion of this video that I would like to use in my timeline. Now, to get this into my timeline, there's a few different ways that I can do this. There's a couple of things down here you can do. However, the ways that I prefer to do this is you can easily just click on the video and drag it over. This is going to take both the video and the audio. Or you can grab this film strip and this will just take the video. Or you can grab this waveform and this will just take the audio. So because I don't think I'm going to be using any of the sound from the clips, I'm going to click on the film strip and drag this over, like so. So there are a few different ways that you can trim video after you've added it to your timeline. One thing you can do is to take your cursor and put it at either end of your video clip, and it creates a red arrow with a bracket. All you have to do is simply click and then drag to the left to shorten, or drag to the right to extend your video clip. So I'm going to drag it to about right here. So what this does now is it leaves this big empty space. To get rid of that space, all you have to do is to either click and you can drag it over, but let's say that we have a bunch of clips behind this, right? We don't want to do that. What we can do is to click this empty space and then simply hit the delete key. One quick note is that you can actually go to your Windows Explorer or Finder if you're on a Mac, and you can actually just drag and drop videos onto your timeline. So another way of being able to trim your clips is to simply either hit C, or you can go over here to where all your tools are, and you want the razor tool. The razor tool is going to allow you to actually go in and you can just cut up the video however you see fit. So for example, I just cut this up into many different pieces like that. To get rid of this, all you have to do is hit V or click on your selection tool, and you can click the empty space and you can drag and highlight everything that you want to delete, and then hit the delete key again. So let's add some text into our video. There's a few different ways that you can add text in your video, but one of the easiest ways to do so is to simply click down here on the type tool, click on your program monitor video, drag and stop. This creates a text box where you can now go through and type in whatever text you would like to. I'm going to use hot air balloons in this case. So as you can see, it created a text block down here in our timeline. To change and customize this text, all you need to do is make sure you have this selected, go to Effects Control. Now where it has this little eyeball, you want to hit this arrow and it creates this drop down menu. From here, you can actually go in here and you can change the text that you're using. You can make your text bigger, you can center your text, you can also change the text fill as well as give it a stroke, background, and or a shadow or anything like that. So I think I'm kind of happy with where my text is right here. I'm gonna go ahead and do that so it's just more in the center. And we can leave it like that. One thing I am going to do is go ahead and take this text and drag it over here. This way it's actually on top of the Jeep clip that's coming in. From here, let's talk about video effects. So video effects, no matter which space you're in, what you're going to be looking for is this effects panel here. The effects panel, you can go in and you can actually just type in what you're looking for, or you can go through different things such as clicking video effects, and you can just kind of browse through and see what you're looking for. There's also video transitions as well, which are all under the same tab. So let's say that for this, I want to make my text fade in instead of just popping up. I can go to dissolve, where it says cross dissolve. I can click this and simply drop it right onto the text block. So now if I play this back, the text actually fades in. You can also take that and put it at the end as well. So now it fades in and then it fades out like that. So let's go back into adding effects and keyframes. So what we can do from here is, let's say that we want to blur the beginning of this clip. So let's go over to where it says blur, or you can go up here and you can actually type in blur, and it'll actually just filter out any effects that contain the word blur in them. And let's say that we actually want a let's go with a camera blur, because I can't say this word. So you're going to click over here and you're going to drag it onto your clip. So now, as you can see, my clip is completely blurred. Just like before, if we go into our effects control menu, click here, we should be able to see where it says camera blur right here. So there it says camera blur, and now we can tell that it's 25% blurred. So from here, we can actually just click this and we can drag this to 0 and the blur is gone. We can drag it to over 100 and you can't even make out the video, right? So let's say that we want it to start off blurred and then come out of being blurred. So what we're going to do is you're going to click this little stopwatch here. What this does is create a keyframe. So now we have one keyframe set to 0, but we want this to start off blurred, so we're going to change this to about, let's go with 25, like how it was set before. And then we can drag over just a little bit and we can click here to add a new keyframe, and then we can just simply drag that to 0. So now if we play this back, it's going to start off blurred and then gradually start going back to being not blurred. If we wanted to extend this blur, all we need to do is simply go over to this keyframe, click it, and then drag it a little bit further along. Now, if we play it back, the blur is a little bit slower. So now that we've gone over transitions and keyframes and effects just a little bit, let's go ahead and talk about adjustment layers. adjustment layers are actually really useful things in Premiere where you can actually edit multiple clips at a time without having to go to each clip individually. So let me go ahead and move this one layer up. We can go back to Project Premiere Tutorial, the project panel, and then where it says new item, you can actually click here and you can add an adjustment layer this way, or you can simply go File, New, and then find adjustment layer, which is right here. So when you make an adjustment layer, if you have a bin, it could pop up in your bin or outside your bin. For this purpose, I never made a bin, so I don't have to worry about it, but it's basically going to be this black looking square here. Take this and you can drag it on top of your clips. It doesn't look like anything's changed right now, but we can click and drag this all the way over. From here, you have a few different options. You can either hit effects and then type in color correction to find whatever you're looking for, or you can simply hit the color workspace, which is what I tend to do. And then you can hit the adjustment layer, and from here, any adjustments that you make over here are going to change everything below the adjustment layer. So for example, if I look through all these clips and I think to myself, man, I really wish these colors were a little bit more saturated, I can go over to where it says saturation and I can increase the saturation. And now if I go back through and look at all of these clips, it's a little bit more saturated in the color. I can also go in, I can raise the exposure just a little bit. I can also make things just a little bit more blue. If you go through, you can clearly tell that I have made some adjustments to the color. Okay, so now let's add some sound or music to our video. So I'm gonna go ahead and click back over into editing. And now we can go back to the project panel. A few different ways we can do this. We can either go to the Explorer window or Finder window and drag and drop our music over. We can double click back in here, and then we can just find the music that we want to use. I'm going to use this one and hit open. And then it opens over in our project panel like everything else did. And from here, you can simply click and drag it over like that. Or again, we can double click on it and it'll bring up our source monitor, because let's say I don't want to use the entire 3 minutes. So I'm going to hit I here, and then click here, and then we're going to hit O. It makes the in and out point, so now I have that small bit selected. I'm going to click the waveform because that's all you can click. You're going to drag it over onto where the audio is. And this thing is still just a little bit too long. So I'm going to hit C or click the razor tool, click here, and then go back to selection tool and hit delete. So one quick thing to note, if you double click this empty space between the microphone and the actual timeline itself, it expands this area or your area of your timeline. So you can actually go to your pen tool and you can click on here, and at different points, and this little white bar that you see, what it does is actually adjusts the volume of your audio file. So I can drag it here and it'll lower it a little bit, or I can drag it up and it'll make it a little bit higher. Can do things like that, and there's no limit to the amount of pins that you can put. So I can put them here and there. You can actually click the pins and even do more fine adjustments. So if you want it to actually just be super gradual like this, or if you want it to be like a quick sudden change, you can do that as well. So that's how you go about doing that. And last but not least, let's say that we still have this bit of audio attached to the video right here. If you ever want to just get rid of those things, all you need to do, simply right click on the video, and then what you're going to be looking for is unlink. Now the video file and the audio file are completely separate from each other. So now you can delete it. What happens if you don't do that is that if you just simply click on it, you're always selecting both the video and the audio file. So if you hit delete, you'll get rid of both of them. So again, what you need to do is right click, unlink. Now they're completely independent of each other, and then hit delete again. I'm going to add some transitions to both the end and the beginning of this little video. So all I need to do for this, and this is just a quick shortcut, you can click on the video and hit Shift and D, and that adds the default transition. For most things, the default transition is going to be some type of dissolve. So we go to the end of this and hit Shift and D. Alright, so from here, let's say that maybe you don't want to export the entirety of your entire timeline. One thing you can do, just like over here in the source monitor, you can simply go to your timeline, you can hit I, and you can also just hit O again, and now you've selected a portion of your timeline that you can now export. gonna go ahead and drag this over because I actually do want the whole thing. So now we're gonna go to File, Export, Media, or you can either go over here if you're clicked on the timeline and hit Control or Command M if you're on Mac, and it'll bring you up this. For the format, I personally prefer H.264 because this will export your video as a .mp4 file. Where it says output name, you can click on the blue text, and in this you can actually go and change it. So I'm going to name this to be Premiere Tutorial, if I could spell. And then I'm going to hit save. From here, normally I like to make my sequence settings basically what I'm going to export as, so normally I never have to really change anything here. I do normally click render at maximum depth, and then you can just simply hit export. And so now your video has been exported, and that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm sorry if this was a bit scuffed. Like I said before, I will definitely put time codes in the description. Please let me know if you have any comments or anything you feel like I could have done better. Thank you, and thanks for watching.